Hello and welcome back to the Lady Landlords podcast. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you pieces of advice that I wish that I had been given when I first started out as a new investor. For those of you that are not familiar with me, my name is Becky Nova. I am the founder of Lady Landlords. Now, when I started in real estate back in 2018, I never knew what this would actually turn into. At the time, my husband and I were only looking to be able to buy a primary residence. We were looking for a place that we were going to be able to live in and that we could find a little bit of a way to save money and not be living mortgage payment to mortgage payment. That was really our entire goal. We had never bought property before. We had never had investment properties before. These were things that were completely new to us. And we had to go through and sort it out. So I'm hoping that by sharing some of the tips and things that I have learned, we'll be able to help you in your own real estate journey. So for us, I still cannot believe the impact that real estate has had just on our lives, even in these few short years that we've even been investing. So in the past few years, what we've been able to do, my husband and I have been able to buy 12 doors, so 12 rental units between New York, where we currently live, and then also in the Dominican Republic, where my husband's from. Now, that to me was just incredibly unique, especially being able to purchase property in a high cost of living area and also an area that is just known for how competitive it is within the New York State real estate market. So when we were going through that, we had to not only learn a lot of these strategies for real estate investing, but we also had to figure out how to do it in such a competitive market through a pandemic, through high cost of living areas, and all of those different barriers there that I know some of you ladies are also facing. What has been so cool though, was not only seeing the properties that we've been able to purchase, but what effects that actually had on our life. One effect that to me probably means more than anything else is really just the relationships that my husband and I have been able to build over these past couple of years between either the realtor that we work with, our financial advisor, our tax accountant, all of those different people that have now kind of come into our lives. Clearly, the best benefit is 100% Lady Landlords. I would have never started our Facebook community if it was not for what I was going through as a new investor. So I am so happy that there's so many of you ladies that I've been able to connect with and get to know personally with and really be able to grow friendships with. That has just been so unique to be able to have other women out there that are looking to do the same thing that I am. When I first started Lady Landlords, I still to this day remember thinking that, okay, in the group, it would literally be like me, my mom, and like my best friend that like I forced to join the group. am still floored every single day just seeing how many women are joining the group and have this similar mission of financial freedom. And financial freedom then to me has been such a great benefit to real estate investing. Over the past 3 years, with even just the 10 units, almost 12 units that we will have, my husband and I have been able to find financial freedom through that. We have been able to replace our incomes. We have been able to switch from really living paycheck to paycheck and figuring out how we're going to be paying our bills to be able to be in a situation where we can feel comfortable with that. Over this past year with the pandemic, that really had a very large impact on our lives. As I've shared with many people before, my husband was impacted with his job during the pandemic. He works in the restaurant industry, and my husband was out of work for about 18 months. And during that time, he was clearly, as anybody would, and myself, incredibly worried about what we were going to do and what our financial situation was going to look like during that time. And it was so nice to be able to reassure him that we were going to be okay, purely because we had that rental income coming in. Clearly, we are incredibly fortunate in the sense that we did still have tenants that were not impacted so much through the pandemic from a financial standpoint. So that clearly helped us. And we do recognize that not every landlord is as lucky as we are in that situation. But it was very nice to be sure that we were able to stay afloat because we had that rental income coming in. And that definitely took just one of the many stressors we all went through during the pandemic, really kind of off of our list. But when we first started, those were things that absolutely did not cross our mind. Like I said, when we first purchased a property, we were looking for our own primary residence. I had said I really did not want to be in a situation where we were going to be living just from mortgage payment to mortgage payment, or be house poor in that situation where now we have, quite a few bedrooms, but yet can't afford to furnish anything. So it was at that time that we decided to actually start with the multifamily. I never knew that that was called house hacking, where you own a multifamily, you live in one unit, and then you rent out the other. That still was not even on my radar. I didn't even consider myself investing. I didn't think of this as an investment property at all. To me, I actually looked at this as almost a savings plan, right? How was I able to keep the most amount of money in my pocket, but still be able to own my own primary residence? So when now we actually bought that property, that was what really changed everything for us. At that closing table, when now I got a check for the tenants that were already there and already made money on day one, I was just hooked on real estate and said, that's it. We got to figure out how to do this again. We need to now purchase another property. So as I've gone through now these years, there are just so many lessons that I have learned, and so many just tips and tricks and things that I wish that I had known when I first started, that I would love to be able to share some of that wisdom. So my first tip for you tonight on things that I wish somebody had told me would be that I should have bought real estate sooner. I wish, now knowing the benefits and just the way that my lifestyle has completely changed over these past few years, if I knew I could have had this earlier on in life, I would have gotten started. Not only from that lifestyle perspective and that financial freedom, but when you start thinking about the properties themselves, our prices go up, not only because of crazy pandemic market, but also through just inflation and the cost of living. So even within that, properties today are going to be more expensive just in the future, purely based off that. I think a lot of us kind of all know somebody, has crossed paths with somebody that bought their house 30, 40, 50 years ago, and clearly the value has just risen on that property. So right there, you're already benefiting by getting started sooner than later. So to me, that is just my first recommendation for absolutely everybody out there, is to figure out what you can start doing to get going now. And I know that does not sound as easy. It's not as easy as it sounds, right? There are a lot of new investors, this might be you listening out there, that get stuck in that analysis paralysis, where we're educating ourselves and we're learning and we're trying to learn all the different steps and make sure that we're making a good decision. But we end up never taking that action, and we just get very stuck in that. So I want to encourage you to really think about what it is that is putting that block on you, that is stopping you from getting that first property. And let's brainstorm. Let's figure out what it is that is holding you back. And let's find a way to be able to get you past that obstacle so you can start working on your first property now. By being able to get that first property and have that cash flow in, you will learn so much that will then make the second, third, fourth deal so much easier. But it really all starts with the first one. But if you never take action for that first one, you are literally leaving money, your dreams, your goals, your lifestyle, your life, just sitting there on the table, just waiting for you. So I hope that encourages you to really think about the things that are in your way as obstacles, and feel free to write some of those down in the comments and let me know what it is that is holding you back. And I'd be happy to walk you through it and discuss different ways that we can kind of move past that. So that's tip number one. Let's move on to tip number two. Tip number two for me really comes from this idea that real estate investing is supposed to be so hard that it almost seems like this weird secret or puzzle that all of us out there that are new are trying to figure out how to solve. I felt that way after I bought that first property. I remember even saying at the closing to both my realtor, my mortgage broker, and my poor husband that we were going to do this again and buy another property. And they were all just kind of looking at me, shaking their heads, being like, there's no way you're going to be able to buy another property as fast as you want. And I said, oh, yes, I will. I'm going to figure out a way, and I'm going to figure out a way to make it work. But when I started looking into those different options, what I realized was that there just was so much information out there that just was not giving that clear-cut answer of what I needed to do next. I was listening to this person's story and that person's story, but it wasn't applicable to me. Maybe they were in a different state, or they were in a different cost of living area that didn't really apply to New York. I know I'm not the only New Yorker or person that lives on a coast that sometimes has that issue, or in a big city. But there were just things that they just didn't relate to me. They just didn't really match up with the same situations that I was going through. And I felt like everybody was like holding on to this secret and not telling me what the answer was to my problem. But as some of you might remember, my day job is actually in cancer research. That's what I've been doing professionally for the past about 15 years now. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And what I do within cancer research is I'm constantly looking for themes. I'm constantly looking for different trends through things that I'm working on. So that way I can always figure out how to improve something, whether that be either a patient's medical care or possibly just even how we relate with patients and how we go through approvals for chemotherapies and other drugs. So I realized I can almost apply that same research and that same guidance of what I do in my day job, but now actually put that into real estate. That completely opened my eyes. I felt like within that, I was able to figure out how to always find the path of least resistance to be able to get a deal done. And that to me was a complete game changer. I feel like in real estate investing, we always think this has to be so complicated. We always think we have to go and use some crazy type of loan, some crazy type of interest, or we have to go do cold calling or knocking on doors and all these other strategies. And yes, there absolutely is a time, a place, and a reason for all of those. But there sometimes just are easier way to get things done and to be able to handle problems and get solutions done in a much faster way. So that to me has made a huge difference, to be able to really look at that path of least resistance. And that is what I help so many women do on a regular basis, is to really look at what their goals are and what they're trying to work towards and figure out what we can do to get them to that place in the cheapest, fastest, and most productive way humanly possible. So that's just something that I encourage you to look at and realize that real estate investing does not have to be difficult. Sometimes it's one of those things that we're actually making more difficult than it really is. So I encourage you to think about what you can do to really get from point A to point B without going through all of those different options and passions. So moving on to tip number 3 for you of something that I wish people had told me. As I mentioned, my husband and I bought that first property really just as our own primary residence. At the time, we weren't thinking about being landlords. We weren't thinking about building some type of larger portfolio at that point in time. But even with that first property, now we had humans that we were housing. And that became really something that stood out to us, that this is now a business. We are the CEOs of our real estate journeys. These are things that we need to then handle them like a business. We need to be looking at it in the sense that we need to understand our numbers. We need to understand our finances, our taxes, what different types of insurance we need, all of the different numbers that go into analyzing a deal. All of those different components are what any business owner would do when they wanted to make sure that they had a successful business. They would also be making sure that they were making the time for this, that they were committing to it, right? If you owned your own business in, consider a more traditional field, right? Let's say you decided to own a clothing store. You wouldn't just decide, okay, well, today I'm going to get up and you know what, actually, I'm not going to open the store today. No, customers are going to be counting on you. They're going to expect that you open a certain period of time, that you're open during regular business hours, that you are committed to process improvement, that you are working on those next things, that you know your numbers, that you know how to run that business, and that you're doing it well. And real estate investing is the exact same. We have to take responsibility for running our real estate investments in the exact same way. And those decisions really come down to us. Yes, we work with other experts. I rely on my realtor. I rely on my mortgage broker. I rely on my contractor. All of those different positions are experts that I count on to provide me with information. But what they are there for is to provide me with different options and make sure that I can make the most educated decision I can for my business. So one of the biggest issues that I see with newer investors is that they don't have that time commitment and they don't focus on that education and being able to put those different processes and systems into place in order to grow a portfolio, which is interesting. I know personally that my goal was to replace my income. I was not going to be happy just making an extra couple bucks. That to me was not worth it to me. If I wanted that, then cool. That would be a hobby and that could be run that way and that would be a very different place. But to me, I want to travel. I want to go live abroad again. I want to be able to say, this is what I would like to do with my day. And this is the thing that I'm passionate about. So then therefore, that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to build that. I'm going to conquer that. That's what I'm going to work for. But I can't have this big vision of what I would like to have in my life and yet expect to do little to no work to be able to get that. So I encourage you that if this is something that you want to do moving forward, start thinking about how you can invest in education for yourself, how you can invest in systemizing a lot of your plans in your organization, and make sure moving forward, you are really treating this as a business. So those are my 3 tips for you today of things that I wish somebody had told me that would have just really saved me a ton of time and ton of money as I was growing my portfolio. If you are a lady out there that is looking for more help and more assistance, I would suggest you look into our Lady Landlords Beginners Group Coaching. We are actually starting that group coaching September 13th. And that is something where we really bring together a large group of women to be able to troubleshoot different issues that they're going through. We provide a course that you would watch a module during the week, and then you would come and show up on your class, and then we would review the content there, and you get all your questions answered about the specific situation that you were going through. So if that interests you, I put the link down in the show notes. Make sure to take a look and send me a message with any questions that you may have, as this really would be an opportunity for you to be able to get your first rental property by the end of 2021. That is what the other ladies in the group are going to be working towards. So if that is you out there saying, this is it, this is my year, this is the 4th quarter of 2021, I need to make some moves happen, this group coaching course is the right place for you. So take a look down on the show notes, and I will see you all next week for our next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast.